This is going to be Cutler's Brigade Part 6 on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook. And we're looking at one of the monuments to the 14th Brooklyn, also known as the 84th New York Volunteers, here on McPherson's Ridge, here on the old McPherson farm. And it was here that Reynolds had a conversation with Colonel Fowler of the 14th Brooklyn. This was the last conversation that Reynolds would ever have. And we looked at this in our Forward, for God's Sake Forward, John F. Reynolds at Gettysburg series. Now, the 14th Brooklyn and the 95th New York, which were just on the other side of the John Burns statue, were in support of Hall's 2nd Maine Battery here on the pike that were drawing the fire from Hers Ridge from Pegram's artillery. These two regiments were here to support them. In that conversation he has with Reynolds, Reynolds then takes off on his horse and rides right along here, along Herbst Woods, over to the spot where about 15 minutes later he would be killed. We're now at 10 o'clock in the morning. Just as Reynolds rides away, an old man of 69 years old, John Burns, walks up to this spot and asks to join the fight. One of the soldiers from the 95th yell out to him, "Go back home, old man." And Burns walks away and then later joins up and fights and is wounded fighting with the Iron Brigade. Now, of course, John Burns was a 69-year-old civilian here in Gettysburg, armed with a flintlock musket in his civilian clothing, joined the fight as the only civilian to fight at the Battle of Gettysburg, being wounded and actually being captured by Confederates, but he was let go when he said that he was in his civilian clothes with a flintlock musket looking for some cows that had escaped. So he made up a nice little fat story there and got out of a lot of trouble, which he could have been executed for. Burns does walk away and joins up with the Iron Brigade. But again, this is part of Cutler's Brigade as Fowler, Colonel Fowler from the 14th Brooklyn, has the last known conversation with John Fulton Reynolds. It is also here near this spot where General Harry Heath was wounded. Just on the other side of this fence is an old tree stump, and it's known as the Harry Heath Witness Stump. And as a bonus, I'm going to take you over there. This is the tree that Heath was wounded on the morning, or wounded by rather, on the morning of July 1st, 1863. Of course, the tree died and fell down and is rotted, and probably within the next 20 years will be totally gone. So we'll take a walk over here to the fence, and this is the tree stump where Harry Heath was wounded on July 1st. All this action with Reynolds and Cutler's Brigade, Dow's Main Battery happening in this area around 10 o'clock in the morning of July 1st, 1863. This has been Cutler's Brigade at Gettysburg, Part 6 on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook. Drucker's Tavern. It was here in the morning of July 1st, 1863 that Pegram's Artillery Battalion was set up all along here on both sides of the Chambersburg Pike, facing in that direction there. Now, this battalion had 20 guns. They had 5 of them that were set up right here, and then Brander's battery set up just to the north here on Hers Ridge Road. Now, of course, in 1863, these batteries that were set up on both sides of the Chambersburg Pike were looking in that direction. And, of course, a lot of this growth that you see was not there. So they had a very easy view of the Union soldiers. This artillery had supported the Confederate attack as they made their way up the Chambersburg Pike, fought on through the Emanuel Harmon farm, crossed Willoughby Run, and then headed over to the Edward McPherson farm, where the fighting got hot and heavy between 9:30 and 10 o'clock in the morning of July 1st, 1863. But this here is the site of Pegram's Confederate Artillery Battalion on the morning of July 1st, 1863. This has been Cutler's Brigade at Gettysburg, Part 7 on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook. Part 8 on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook. And I'm standing here in the area where Brander's Virginia Battery, also known as the Letcher Artillery. Now, these batteries had two 10-pound Parrots, two Napoleon guns. And they were pointed in the direction of our camera here on the morning as a part of Pegram's artillery, which was here along the Chambersburg Pike. And these guns were focusing in this direction here. In front of us in the distance, you can see a house and a barn here. That was owned by a man named James Wills, and it was rented to a tenant farmer, a black tenant farmer named William Job. The focus of Brander's artillery was this ridgeline beyond the Job farm, over here looking at Sheed's Woods in the distance. What was the reason for that? Because just over here, where the lane behind the barn goes back to the woods, is the monument to the 76th New York Infantry. And that was the aim of the Brander's artillery. They did quite a bit of damage to the 76th New York Infantry, which was just over there on the ridgeline on the morning of July 1st, 1863. And if you remember, the swale was over here. Cutler's brigade was supposed to cross the Chambersburg Pike and then line up on this ridgeline. Some of the confusion sent them over to the McPherson barn, and Hall's main battery was brought over in this direction to concentrate their fire on Pegram's artillery battalion. Brander's sat here to the north. Their focus was aiming just past the Job farm at the 76th New York Volunteers. This has been Cutler's Brigade at Gettysburg, Part 8, on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook. At Gettysburg, Part 9 on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook. And we're looking at the monument to the 56th Pennsylvania Infantry in Cutler's Brigade. Now, after crossing the swale over here, they headed in this direction, and they come into line here alongside of the 76th New York, which is here to their right. Now, of course, we talked about the 76th New York in our last video, as they were the subject of Brander's artillery fire going across the Job farm right here at them. But to the left of the 56 New York Volunteers, or 56 Pennsylvania Volunteers, in this direction, back toward the railroad cut, there was nobody there. There was a large gap, which was supposed to be filled by the 147th New York Volunteers in the line of march. That was messed up when Hall's battery was placed over by the McPherson barn by John Reynolds. And then the 147th New York moved into the McPherson farm. We'll talk about their positioning as they were there for 5 minutes on our next video, but this was the gap that was created by the movement of Hall's battery over in the swale coming off the Lutheran Theological Seminary. This has been Cutler's Brigade, Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook, and we're passing the monument for the 147th New York Infantry, which sits here near the railroad cut. Now, there was a gap here on July 1st, 1863, because the 147th did not first be placed in line here. They actually moved forward to the Edward McPherson barn area and house over there that you see in the distance. When the Hall's main battery was placed in a position, the 147th got confused. They moved up with the 14th Brooklyn and the 95th New York to the McPherson farm. They were there for about 5 minutes. And when they were there, they then moved to their right and crossed the Chambersburg Pike near the crest of the hill. Now, as we get here on top of the railroad cut bridge, you can see in the distance a low-lying area here in the distance. That is where the 147th crossed, and then right here by this tree line is where their first position was. Of course, they would be beaten back into this area. Now, when they were placed out here, they were placed on the reverse slope of the military crest, which is on the far side downward. You can see the slope right here. This is the reverse slope, the very crest of the hill, and then the forward slope would be right against the wood lines. They were placed on the reverse slope, could move up to the crest to see the enemy, and then fall back. And then eventually they would fall back to their positioning here along Cutler's Brigade line. This has been Cutler's Brigade Part 10 on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook.